Welcome to Tourism Talk. I'm Laura Oswald, Director of Marketing at the Paducah Convention and Visitors Bureau. When Paducah was designated a UNESCO Creative City of Crafts and Folk Art in 2013, we joined one other U.S. city with this honor. That city, Santa Fe, has a wonderful representative here today to visit with us. City Councilor Peter Ives, thank you so much for joining us on Tourism Talk.
A delight to be able to join you here today, Laura.
And this is not your first trip to Paducah.
Heavens, no.
You were here for the Creative Cities meeting back in 2017, and we have had a great connection to your city and to you specifically as the focal point through Paducah's time in the network. So it's a delight to have you here, and we'd certainly love for you to start by introducing yourself and your role in Santa Fe, and let our viewers know who you are.
Excellent. Happy to do that. My name is Peter Ives. I'm a city councilor in Santa Fe for District 2. We have 4 districts in the city. And I've been a councilor now for a little over 7 years. And in that time, I've had the pleasure of being the sort of city's second representative to the UNESCO network, the city councilor who was first and there when Santa Fe became a part of the network back in 2008 timeframe, was also from District 2. And so our district has had a good deal of history with UNESCO, and what a delight it has been, and what a delight it has been to come to know Paducah and your tourism department and the folks here, and to be able to come to Paducah to spend some time, share in the arts and culture of your city. Santa Fe is of course well known. It is the oldest capital city in the United States, founded in 1609, 1610 time frame. I am in that great scheme of history, a recent newcomer. I moved to Santa Fe in 1983, but had the good fortune to marry a local woman, Patricia, my wife, now of coming up on 34 years, and she was originally a Salazar, so her family had been in northern New Mexico for that past 300 to 400 years, so was able to really establish some deep ties into the community, into the culture, into New Mexico, into Santa Fe, which have been just a wonderful part of my life.
Absolutely.
And Santa Fe, of course, sat on old trade routes, the Camino Real coming out of Mexico, of course, the old Santa Fe Trail. Yeah. And so it always had an incredible influx of people, of commerce, of trading, and of course, long before it became Santa Fe, it was Agapoge, which was the original Pueblo, Native American community that lived in Santa Fe. And so that community had been there probably for somewhere between 1,000 to 2,000 years. So it is very tricultural in a sense. Our native population, and they are still very present as part of our community today. The Spanish influence, and actually the name of the city, if you wanted the full thing, is La Villa Real de la Santa Fe de San Francisco de Asís. So the royal city of the Holy Faith of St. Francis of Assisi. And of course, when we celebrated our 400th year anniversary recently, it was also 400 years of the faith in that part of the United States. And, you know, I grew up in Connecticut and was woefully ignorant based upon the history we studied back there. And my ancestors tie both to the Mayflower and early 1600s in Massachusetts and in Connecticut. And of course, by the time my people were getting there, my wife's people were already well established in New Mexico and making it happen. So
Yes.
it has added, as I say, a richness to my life, which is wonderful.
Absolutely. Well, I love how that is where you start the story of Santa Fe, because we very often tell Paducah's story in talking about the original highways, which were the rivers,
Yes.
and trade and commerce and transportation, being a mover not only of people and goods, but of culture. So that certainly is something we can relate to here, although we're not quite as old of a city as an establishment as Santa Fe. But certainly, I think that cultural heritage does run deep, and that very much is what we are built on here as creative cities and continuing.
And I would say that certainly the Native American presence in this community undoubtedly dates back similarly to that in Santa Fe, and our more modern constructs. They took a lot longer to put in place, but are vibrant and really living that cultural experience at this point in time.
And in Santa Fe, what is that experience today? What could our viewers, maybe who haven't experienced Santa Fe yet, what does that look like? What draws people in today?
Many different things is the short answer. We are certainly known across the world as a significant arts community. We have certain well-founded cultural institutions, such as the Santa Fe Opera, which is, I think, in its 58th season, somewhere around in there, but world-renowned and a wonderful place with a season that begins in late June and runs into August. We celebrate during our summer 3 significant marketplaces.
Yes.
The first and the youngest is the International Folk Art Market, which I believe last year attracted approximately 150 master craftspeople from 75 countries around the world to Santa Fe. And what I love about that particular market, it takes place during the sort of second weekend in July, but it's a week-long series of festivities celebrating these artists, but and that's culminating in the market, which is up on an area called Museum Hill, where we have an aggregation of a Spanish colonial art museum, a Native American museum, and the International Folk Art Museum. But the artists bring in the wares that they have produced from their countries. The market attracts tens of thousands of people to come and see that and to buy. And the artists go home, I think last year it was with an average sales for the weekend of about $21,000, which often, yes, can be 2 to 3 years worth of earnings in their home country. So I always say it expresses for me one of the lines I love from the prayer of St. Francis, which is, "It is in giving that we receive." So Santa Fe receives by virtue of giving these artists an opportunity to showcase their work from around the world. It certainly enriches the cultural experience in Santa Fe by exposing us to folks from every continent around the world. And these artists get to take home, a real significant benefit, which helps them and their communities back in the countries that they came from. So that's one of the 3 markets. We have Spanish Colonial Art Market, which is the final weekend in July, which features the arts of and traditional arts of Spanish colonial America. So lots of retablos and bultos and furniture, tin work, and again, pieces that, jaw-droppingly beautiful and wonderful. And of course, significantly focused often on religious issues and the Catholic faith. And then finally, in the 3rd weekend in August, we have Indian Market, which is, I think, this year going into its 98th annual year. And it, like the other 2 markets, is, I believe, the largest of its kind, certainly in the United States, and insofar as it they feature the Spanish colonial, the largest in the world. And the city shuts down its core, all of our streets, and booths are put up, and so Native American artists will come from around the country to showcase their work. There's, of course, a juried competition, as with Spanish Market, and the pieces that are done, again, are just remarkable.
Yes.
And some people have been coming to that market for over 40 years just to attend it and to see those goods and have an opportunity to buy. An example, a wonderful story, and I believe this was 2 years ago, we were at Spanish Market, and the best of show, so the best piece in the entire marketplace was a Navajo rug. And it was probably about 14 feet by 14 feet. And the grandmother, a very honored term in the Navajo culture, who had woven the rug, was there with one of her granddaughters. And we were talking to the granddaughter, and the story she related was that all the wool that went into the rug came from the sheep that belonged to the family and were grazed on their land out on the Navajo reservation. And the sheep were different colors. There was no dyeing. So when grandmother needed more wool of a particular color, she'd basically say something along the lines of, well, go get me more Henry, because each one of the sheep had a name. And it's a wonderful window into art, into culture, into that generational relationship, which is so significant out in the Navajo reservation. And again, that authentic cultural immersion and experience is so fundamental to why people come to Santa Fe.
Yes.
And such a joy too. Every time I come to Paducah, I really am going to have to just come back for a week or two and stay and walk around the entire town. But with the Quilt Museum, experiencing those deep roots in American culture, and again, these art forms grow out not of high art. And that's the wonderful thing about craft and folk art. They come up through culture and through the identity of people, and then become symbols of who we are that then we can share. And the Quilt Museum is, again, such a beautiful example of that.
Well, that's beautifully said. And I think that hits on both the value of cultural tourism and exposing the public to these unique and authentic connections to culture of a place, of Santa Fe, of Paducah, but also the value of this Creative Cities Network and allowing us a global platform to amplify that message and share what makes our cities so unique.
Couldn't agree with you more. And it has been wonderful to travel to different parts of the world, sharing those cultural roots, sharing that and experiencing that cultural authenticity in the different places where our meetings are held. I know last year meetings in South Korea of our sub-network of craft and folk art, and being able to experience their new ceramic city in Icheonsi there with Mayor Cho. Again, remarkable, and certainly their ceramics evidence of a 2,000 to 3,000 year history of that. Again, it's become high art, but simply grew out of, we need utensils, we need bowls, we need plates, and then these simple statements of culture and need based upon the, if you will, the elements that you find in that area all of a sudden become representative of the culture of the people there, and truly become fine art.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, for us to not only be in a class and connected to cities like Santa Fe, to cities like Icheon, but to have that opportunity to network and learn and build those relationships, we have found such value in the sharing of best practices, seeing what they're doing with that ceramic village and how that is building their creative economy,
Yes.
truly, in their future. A term that we often use is creativity for sustainable development.
Yes.
And that certainly is at the heart of it all. This culture has value to us as people, but it has value on a bigger scale to the futures of our cities.
Yes.
How do you see that being in city leadership in Santa Fe? What is the value of creativity for kind of forward-thinking sustainable development?
Well, this, of course, plays significantly into the 2030 agenda of UNESCO. And it was fascinating because UNESCO itself, I think, went through a little epiphany probably about 7 years ago, because they had certainly been strongly promoting sustainable development. But they realized that that really was linked to culture.
Yes.
And when you have that opportunity in a particular location, and again, where you have a long-established populace that has living in community, I mean, that's the roots of culture, to be able to sustainably support yourself often involves finding how that those cultural roots can be expressed in a more creative fashion. Santa Fe with our Native American pottery, jewelry, weaving, on and on. Those are generational crafts and generational arts that are taught by within families. So, for instance, at some of our pueblos, you'll have a family of potters, and Maria Martinez is probably one of the best known in that fashion, because there are actually genealogical charts starting with her that show the rest of her family, and it's now probably 4 or 5 generations of Native American potters. And work that will stand up against collections of anyone in the world. Limoges, of course, became a member of the network in craft and folk art. And I could easily see fine Limoges wares sitting next to San Ildefonso pot, or say a pot by Youngblood, some of the true craftspeople. So, yes, wonderful that is happening and recognized around the world.
Yes.
And I will say, too, it's so important, too. I mean, Santa Fe is a fairly wealthy city in the sense that high standard of living, high property values. We in America have it very good in a sense, but some of the cities that participate around the world certainly are not known for their economic power or vitality. And so being able to establish that creative culture, creative development, creativity as the base of an economic development is incredibly significant.
Absolutely.
And sustainable.
Yes. And I think that there is such a diverse group of cities within the network that there are many commonalities, certainly. And as you mentioned, pots from all of these different cities could certainly represent those cities quite well. But the development aspect is something I know that we're all focused on. And one opportunity that Santa Fe has used is a creative approach to development, the Culture Connects Santa Fe project. Will you tell us a little bit about that and what that has looked like in your city?
Yeah. Because Santa Fe can be seen something as a city of haves and have-nots, and but there's a wide wealth disparagence, and we are always concerned that will impact our community in a negative way, because, and certainly as a city councilor, we want to make sure that all of our citizens have the opportunity to live, to raise families, and to thrive within our community. And Culture Connects was an effort by the city to really understand the depth of Santa Fe's cultural diversity and roots, and then to be able to use that as a mechanism for building bridges between all those communities. One of the things we struggled with recently was an event called the Entrada, which celebrated the return of Don Diego de Vargas, a conquistador, who, after the Spanish were sort of thrown out of northern New Mexico in the Pueblo Revolt of 1680, which many refer to as the first American Revolution. 12 years later, in 1692, Don Diego de Vargas returned and reestablished the Spanish presence in northern New Mexico, which is very strong to this day. But the Entrada was a celebration of that, and quite frankly, that was offensive to certainly some of our Native American community because it smacked of conquest. And so actually we went through a period where the city, working with Tesuque Pueblo, which is the Pueblo that most closely identifies with Santa Fe as a homeland, as well as Archbishop Wester with the Roman Catholic Church, engaged in a series of meetings designed to seek some reconciliation and to determine how to move forward on that particular issue. And the result was the adoption of a new resolution commemorating the celebration of all of our cultures, whereas the original proclamation dates back to 1712 and, is much more focused on some of the conquest aspects of history. And Culture Connects sort of weaves into that in my mind, because by recognizing the validity of another person's culture and respecting that, you have the opportunity, I think, for dialogue as well as peaceful resolution of issues. So the Entrada was eliminated, and I thank especially Archbishop Wester for recognizing, as he put it, we shouldn't be celebrating something that leaves other people feeling victimized. And so we moved on, and the Culture Connects is an effort to continue that dialogue, to look at culture throughout the entirety of Santa Fe, and not to try and homogenize culture, but to recognize the differences, respect them, and in that, realize the richness of living in diverse community and culture.
Absolutely. And I think that, you started by talking about the history and the people that settled Santa Fe and originally were there. And then that brings us up to today. Culture is not just something that is in the past. It very much is who we are today and the traditions that we relate to. And so I know with diverse communities here in Paducah, there are very unique things and very authentic things that we hope to celebrate. And so looking at Culture Connects has been a very inspirational opportunity that your city has taken on to do just that.
Well, and I look at somebody like Georgia O'Keeffe, very strongly tied to Santa Fe. It was her home during the final years of her life, and of course Abiquiu, where she had her home, as well as out at Ghost Ranch. There are strong connections there. The Georgia O'Keeffe Museum is, of course, based in Santa Fe. So again, that's example of that modern culture really coming in to play. And the wonderful thing about art and culture and creativity is that each generation takes what there is and advances it in some way, and again, enriching us all.
Yes.
And as there are so many connections, I think, between Santa Fe and Paducah, even down to the Energy Communities Alliance. Of course, we have Los Alamos in our backyard, but Paducah itself has a significant history with the Department of Energy, the uranium industry, those types of things.
Very much plays in.
Yes.
As we wrap up here, I would love for you to just leave our viewers with a thought of having been a more veteran member in the Creative Cities Network and welcomed Paducah in so wholeheartedly and been a great example for us throughout the years. I'd love if you would leave our viewers with just a kind of final thought on the value of Creative Cities and this network that we're a part of.
I would start by saying that as a city councilor, I've come to realize that the city is the most intimate point at which government and the governed interact. So there is a commonality to the city experience that exists from Santa Fe with a population of 85,000, give or take, to Beijing with a population of over 20 million. We still fix the streets, we still deliver services, we still fill in the potholes, all those things. And so to be able to have a network of cities focused on creativity as a fundamental building block of their socioeconomic fabric is wonderful, because the shared experience, the learning how it has been done in another place, if you will, I always call that, eliminating the negative know-how, right? The painful experience of failure. If you can vault to the right path, God bless you, you save a lot of money and time. It's very rewarding in that sense. And that network of people is, I think, fundamental, therefore, to moving our cities forward in ways that make sense, as well as recognizing that people who speak different languages, people who come from totally different cultures, people who worship different gods, in a sense, there is a commonality to our experience that binds us as human beings and is remarkable, and the Creative City Network reinforces that for me every time we get together.
Wonderful. That's beautifully stated. Peter, it has been a delight to have you here today, and we appreciate you representing Santa Fe and sharing that with our city here in Paducah.
Well, the delight is mine, and what a joy to be here with you.
Thank you, Peter. And please do learn more about Paducah's role in the Creative Cities Network, our fellow creative cities of crafts and folk art, like Santa Fe and those all around the world, at paducah.travel/creative city. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time. Ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da.